Okay, so you watch that Harris-Trump debate,
Uh-huh.
and now you're ready to, like, really dig in.
Yeah,
You want to go beyond those, the sound bites and the headlines
absolute.
and get to the real story. Like, what does this showdown tell us about these candidates? And maybe even, about the future of American politics. We came to the right place.
That's right. We're going to be looking at 6 key moments from the debate and, really try to unpack what they reveal.
Yeah, it's not about rehashing the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's about finding those fascinating details, those
Yeah.
nuggets,
Yeah.
the things that reveal something bigger.
Right. Those subtle cues, the strategies that often go unnoticed.
Exactly. And we're going to uncover the stories behind the story.
I like that.
So, for example, that handshake at the beginning.
Right.
It was the first one in a presidential debate in like 8 years, right? I mean, who would have thought?
Yeah, you wouldn't think a simple handshake could be so loaded, but it can be.
Oh, it can be loaded.
It's all about optics. Presidential debates, they're not just about policy.
Right.
They're performances. Every gesture, every facial expression is calculated.
They're totally choreographed.
Exactly. It's all part of a larger strategy.
So, like, what was the strategy with the handshake?
Well, I think in this case, it was probably an attempt to project a sense of civility,
Yeah.
a contrast
Yeah.
to all the divisive rhetoric that we've been hearing.
Right. And that civility didn't exactly last, did it? I mean, once they got into it, their body language was like night and day.
It's fascinating how they use nonverbal communication to kind of play to their strengths.
Yeah, you had Harris smiling, laughing, even shaking her head at some of the things that Trump was saying.
Right, and that can be interpreted as confident, even amused by his attempts to kind of rattle her.
Uh-huh.
And that plays into her image as, that quick-witted, unflappable leader.
But Trump, on the other hand,
Yeah.
he was mostly just staring straight ahead, like
Wait,
almost
right.
like he was trying to bore a hole through her with his eyes.
Some might see that as presidential,
Great.
that kind of classic, strong, silent type.
Yeah.
But to others, it could come across as dismissive or even arrogant.
Oh, for sure. It depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
Right. And I think both campaigns know that.
You do.
All right. So we've got the visual cues, but let's get into the verbal sparring now.
Okay.
I mean, Harris, she didn't waste any time going on the offensive.
No, she did not.
It was like, bam, right out of the gate, she hit him on his legal troubles, his handling of the pandemic, accusing him of using race to divide the country.
It's a classic strategy, especially for a challenger.
Yeah.
You come out swinging, you try to put your opponent on the defensive.
And those are all issues that are really, weighing on people's minds.
They are.
I mean, the pandemic, the racial tensions, the economy.
Yeah, she's tapping into those anxieties and frustrations that a lot of voters are feeling.
And what about Trump? I mean, he kind of fell back on some familiar territory, right? Inflation, immigration, those bread and butter issues.
Yeah, the things that resonate with his base.
Exactly. But then he throws in this attempt to brand Harris as a Marxist,
Yeah.
as a Biden clone.
Right.
It's like he was trying to dredge up those old Cold War fears.
Yeah, it's a tactic we've seen him use before.
Is.
Trying to paint his opponents as radical, dangerous, out of touch with mainstream America.
And it works, doesn't it? I mean, in this world of 2047 news and social media, these labels, they stick, whether they're accurate or not.
Unfortunately, they do.
It's like that old saying, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes.
That's a good one.
And that's why I think these debates are so important.
They are.
They provide a platform for fact-checking,
Yeah.
for challenging those oversimplifications.
Absolutely.
Forcing the candidates to actually defend their positions.
Right.
Speaking of challenging, did you notice how they both kept using that phrase?
Oh, I'm talking now.
Yeah, talking.
Right.
I mean, we've heard them both use it before in other debates.
We have.
It's like their go-to line
Yeah.
when they want to interrupt or, kind of assert their dominance.
Right.
But does it actually work?
It depends on who you ask, Some people might see it as assertive, taking control of the conversation.
Yeah.
Others might see it as rude, disrespectful, even childish.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a risk. You might alienate some viewers by coming across as too aggressive.
I think it also kind of feeds into that larger trend we're seeing in politics where civility is taking a back seat to this constant battle for attention,
It's true. It's like the rules of engagement have changed, and it's raising questions about what's acceptable behavior,
Yeah.
in a political setting.
And then there was that moment when Trump brought up the assassination attempt against him,
Oh, right.
blaming it on, heated rhetoric from Democrats. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty serious accusation.
Yeah, it is.
And it just shows how polarized things have become, right?
It does. It really speaks to the level of polarization we're experiencing, where political opponents are no longer seen as, just having different views, but as existential threats.
It's scary.
It is scary, and it raises a disturbing question. Are we reaching a point where political violence is becoming normalized?
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
And it kind of leads us to another moment
Hmm.
that will left me scratching my head, the whole dog eating accusation.
Oh, yeah. Where did that even come from?
I know, right?
Yeah.
So bizarre.
Do you remember those rumors that were circulating online before the debate about the Haitian migrants?
The ones about them stealing and eating pets.
Yes, those unsubstantiated claims that were amplified by Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance.
Even though city officials had already debunked them.
Even though there was no evidence to support it, Trump brought them up in the debate.
Why?
Well, one possibility is that he was trying to tap into existing fears and prejudices.
Yeah.
Create an us versus them dynamic that paints immigrants as dangerous outsiders.
It's a classic scapegoating tactic, isn't it? Find a vulnerable group, blame them for society's problems, stir up fear and resentment.
Exactly. And it's particularly effective in a media environment where misinformation spreads so easily.
Yeah, I mean, even if the claims are later debunked, the damage is often already done.
Unfortunately, that's right.
Especially when you have someone like Trump repeating those claims on a national stage.
Yeah, it gives them a veneer of legitimacy.
Right, it's like he's saying, don't believe your lying eyes, believe me.
Exactly.
And that's the danger of this kind of rhetoric. It erodes trust in institutions and facts, in the very idea of a shared reality.
It thrives on division and chaos.
And then you have Harris's response calling the claims extreme. It's like she's trying to appeal to reason,
Right.
remind people that there's a difference between fact and fiction.
Uh-huh.
But in this hyper-polarized environment, is that even enough?
It's a good question. Can you combat misinformation and fear-mongering with appeals to reason and evidence? Or have we entered a post-truth era where emotions trump facts?
It's an unsettling thought, and it makes you wonder, what does all of this mean for the future of political discourse?
Right.
If we can't even agree on basic facts, how can we even have a meaningful conversation about the issues that matter?
It's a challenge, there's no doubt about that. But I think it also underscores the importance of critical thinking,
Yeah.
of being discerning consumers of information.
We can't just passively absorb whatever we see and hear, right?
No, we need to question, we need to verify, we need to seek out multiple perspectives.
You make a good point. Maybe this debate, as chaotic and unsettling as it was, can serve as a wake-up call.
I hope so.
A reminder that we can't just be spectators in this political drama. We have to be active participants.
We do.
Engaged citizens who are willing to challenge misinformation, hold our leaders accountable, and demand better from our political discourse.
I think that's where the real hope lies.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still so much to unpack. Stay tuned, folks, because we're just getting started.
Welcome back. It's easy to get caught up in the back and forth of a debate,
The theatra.
the attacks, the zingers.
Right.
But what we're trying to do here is go a little deeper, look beyond the surface,
Yeah. To those subtle moments, those little things that reveal something bigger about the candidates and their strategies.
Exactly.
Like when Trump accused Harris of having no policies.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, come on.
A little ironic, isn't it?
It's laughable.
Given his own history of being, shall we say, light on specifics.
Exactly.
It's classic projection, isn't it?
Total projection.
Try to deflect attention from your own weaknesses by accusing your opponent of the same thing.
Yeah.
But I think it also speaks to a larger trend that we're seeing in politics, this blurring of the lines between fact and fiction, this reliance on rhetoric over substance.
And it's not like Harris let him get away with it.
No, she didn't.
She kept hammering home that message. I have a plan, especially when it came to the economy. It was like she was trying to reassure voters. Like, look, I'm not just talking, I have concrete solutions.
Yeah, and that contrast in styles is really interesting.
Yeah.
Harris, with her background as a prosecutor, she's very comfortable, diving into the details,
Right.
laying out her arguments in a very logical, systematic way.
But Trump, on the other hand,
Yeah, he thrives on the big picture, the bold pronouncements.
the sweeping statements.
He's a master of persuasion, of tapping into emotions and anxieties.
So it's like two totally different approaches.
It is, and both approaches have their strengths and weaknesses.
It makes you wonder, though, like, how would each of them actually govern?
Right.
Would Harris be able to translate those detailed plans into real-world action, or would she get bogged down in the complexities of Washington?
It's a question voters will have to grapple with.
And then there's the question of temperament.
Right.
How would each candidate handle those inevitable crises that come with the job?
Yeah. Would Harris remain calm and collected under pressure?
Would Trump be able to resist those impulsive tendencies?
Right. The gut reactions that have,
Yeah.
gotten him into trouble in the past.
It's amazing how much a single debate can reveal.
It is.
All these questions, all these
And
possibilities.
that's why it's so important to, go beyond the sound
And to
bites.
look for those revealing moments.
Exactly. The things that tell us something deeper about the candidates and their potential
Yeah.
as leaders.
Okay, so we've talked about style, we've talked about temperament, but let's get down to brass tacks here.
Okay.
What about the actual policies?
Yeah.
For example, when it came to healthcare, Trump kept talking about these concepts he had for replacing Obamacare.
Right.
But given his track record, his repeated attempts to dismantle the Affordable Care Act,
Uh-huh.
it's hard to take those promises seriously.
It does raise questions about his commitment to actually, improving healthcare for all Americans.
Yeah, is he genuinely interested in providing affordable, accessible care?
Mm.
Or is this just another campaign promise,
Yeah.
something to dangle in front of voters without any real intention of following through?
It's hard to say for sure.
And then on the other side, you have Harris talking about expanding access to health care, making it more affordable, protecting pre-existing conditions.
Yeah,
It's a more detailed plan for sure,
it is.
but it also raises questions about, feasibility, about political opposition.
Yeah, healthcare is such a complex issue.
It is.
With so many competing interests, so many potential pitfalls.
It's easy to make promises on the campaign trail, but governing is a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely.
And then there's the issue of abortion.
Yeah.
This was a major flashpoint in the debate, and it really reflects, one of the most divisive issues in our society today.
It does. The Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade has really reignited the debate over abortion rights.
And it's not going away anytime soon.
No, it's not.
Harris was very forceful in her condemnation of Trump's stance on abortion, accusing him of wanting to ban it altogether
Right.
and highlighting the impact that would have on women's lives.
Yeah.
It was a powerful moment.
It was, and it speaks to the passion that this issue evokes on both sides of the debate.
For a lot of women, abortion is about bodily autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
about control over their own destinies. And they see the overturning of Roe v. Wade as a direct attack on those fundamental rights.
Right.
And on the other side, you have those who believe that life begins at conception,
Yeah.
that abortion is morally wrong.
And they see the Supreme Court's decision as a victory for the unborn.
Yeah, and it's important to acknowledge, the deeply held beliefs that inform both sides of this debate.
Absolutely. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing that there are these fundamental differences in values
And worldviews.
that make this issue so difficult to resolve.
But even with those differences, shouldn't there be some common ground?
I hope so.
Some basic principles that we can all agree on?
You're like, what?
Like the need to provide comprehensive sex education,
Okay.
to make contraception readily available to support women who choose to carry their pregnancies to term.
Those are all important points, and I think there is growing recognition, even among those who oppose abortion, that we need to do more to support women and families.
It's like that old saying, if you're against abortion, don't have one.
Right.
But let's do more than just not have abortions.
Yeah.
Let's create a world where every woman feels empowered to make the best decisions for herself and her family.
I think that requires a more holistic approach,
Yeah.
one that addresses not just the legal aspects of abortion, but the social and economic and cultural factors that influence women's choices.
And that's a conversation we need to have as a society.
We do.
A conversation that goes beyond the rhetoric,
Yes.
beyond the sound bites.
And gets to the heart of what it means to create a just and equitable world for all.
It's interesting how this debate keeps circling back to this theme of choice.
It-
Choice about healthcare choice,
Mm-hmm.
about abortion choice, about what kind of future we want to build.
Right.
And in a way, that's what democracy is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, having the power to choose our leaders, to shape our destiny as a nation.
And that's why it's so important to be informed, to be engaged, to participate in the process.
Our choices matter.
They do. They really do. And sometimes those choices can be really tough, like when it comes to gun control.
Yeah, that's another issue that's deeply polarizing.
And we saw that reflected in the debate.
Absolutely. You have Trump appealing to his base with that image of, the radical liberal who wants to take away everyone's guns.
Right.
It's a very powerful tactic, especially in a country where gun ownership is so deeply ingrained in the culture.
And then you have Harris pushing back against that narrative,
Uh-huh.
saying, hey, I'm a gun owner myself,
Right.
and I believe in responsible gun ownership.
Trying to find that common ground.
Yeah, it's like she's saying, look, this isn't about taking away your rights. It's about working together to keep our communities safe.
And it highlights the complexity of the issue, right?
It does.
I mean, it's not as simple as pro-gun versus anti-gun.
Right.
There are a lot of people who own guns but also support stricter regulations.
Yeah, who believe we can protect the Second Amendment while also taking steps to reduce gun violence.
Exactly.
But how do you find that balance? How do you navigate such a contentious issue and one that evokes such strong emotions on both sides?
It's a challenge for sure, but I think it starts with listening.
Okay.
With understanding the different perspectives, with recognizing that there is common ground to be found.
So where do we go from here? What are some concrete steps we can take?
Well, maybe it's about focusing on specific policies like universal background checks or red flag laws.
There's a broad public support.
They do.
Okay.
Or maybe it's about shifting the conversation away from rights and towards responsibility, towards the shared goal of keeping our community safe.
I like that it's like you can support the right to bear arms, but that doesn't mean you have to support the right to bear any kind of arms anywhere, anytime.
Right. There have to be limits.
Just like we have limits on free speech on other constitutional rights.
Exactly. No, right is absolute. And I think there is growing recognition, even among gun owners, that we need to have a serious conversation about how to balance individual rights with public safety.
Maybe this debate, for all its flaws,
Yeah.
for all the shouting and the interrupting, can serve as a starting point for that conversation.
I hope so.
Because if we can't talk about these tough issues, if we can't find a way to bridge the divide, then what hope is there for our democracy?
That's a question we all need to ask ourselves. And maybe, just maybe, the answer lies not in shouting louder, but in listening more deeply.
Yeah.
In seeking to understand rather than to condemn. In recognizing that even in our disagreements, we share a common humanity, a common destiny.
That's a powerful thought, and it kind of leads us to the final segment of our deep dive, where we'll explore how both candidates use language, not just to attack each other, but to frame the debate, to shape the narrative, to connect with voters on an emotional level.
Because in politics, words are weapons.
They are.
And knowing how to wield them can make all the difference.
Stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, we are back and ready to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We really have. I mean, it feels like we've gone, from the big picture to those really subtle moments, those little details that reveal so much about how these candidates operate.
Yeah, we've seen the fiery exchanges, those big clashing moments.
Yeah.
But we've also gone deeper, analyzing the tactics, the coded language, the things that might have slipped past you in the heat of the moment.
Because let's face it, debates aren't just about who has the best policy ideas.
Right. It's about performance.
It's about persuasion.
Absolutely. It's about connecting with voters on a visceral level.
So let's talk about language.
Sure.
How do they use those rhetorical weapons? What struck you about their word choices, their phrasing?
Well, think about how Harris kept repeating that phrase, "I have a plan."
Yeah, she did.
It's simple, but it's effective, especially when contrasted with Trump's more vague pronouncements.
Right.
It conveys a sense of competence, of preparedness.
Like she's ready to go.
Exactly, someone who's ready to hit the ground running.
And Trump, he's always been more about the big picture.
The sweeping promises.
The emotionally charged labels.
Like calling her a Marxist or a radical liberal.
Right.
It's a way of tapping into those deep-seated fears.
Yeah.
Of simplifying a complex world into this battle between good and evil.
And it's a strategy that's worked for him before.
It has.
Remember, he's a master showman.
He is a salesman at heart.
He knows how to play to his audience, how to create that sense of urgency of us versus them.
But it's a dangerous game, though.
It is.
Because once you start eroding trust in facts, in evidence, in reasoned debate, it becomes very difficult to have a productive conversation about the issues that matter.
Yeah, it creates a climate where misinformation can flourish.
Exactly, where conspiracy theories take root.
And we've seen how that can play out in the real world.
We have.
The rise of extremism, the increasing polarization of our society.
It's like we're losing our ability to have civil disagreements.
Yeah.
To see the other side as human beings with legitimate perspectives.
It's a worrying trend.
A democracy can't function without, a shared commitment to truth, To reason
to
out.
the principles of fair play.
Exactly.
So, given all of this, what's your takeaway from this debate? What does it tell us about the state of our political discourse?
I think it's a wake-up call.
Okay.
A reminder that we can't just be passive observers.
We have to be active participants.
We have to be engaged citizens, willing to call out lies, to challenge misinformation, to demand better from our leaders.
Yeah.
It's like we can't just sit back and hope that someone else is going to fix this. Right.
We have to be the change we want to see.
And it starts with being informed, with educating ourselves, with understanding the issues, with being discerning consumers of information.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to listen to different perspectives, to engage in respectful dialogue, to find common ground where we can.
Because at the end of the day, we're all in this together.
We are.
We share a common destiny.
Yeah.
And our choices, our actions, they have consequences.
They do consequences that ripple far beyond
It's
ourselves.
a lot of responsibility.
It is.
But it's also an incredible opportunity.
It is. To shape the future, to build a better world.
And that's what makes these deep dives so rewarding.
I agree.
It's not just about analyzing a debate. It's about empowering ourselves to be more informed, more engaged, more thoughtful citizens.
Because that's how we create a democracy that truly works for everyone.
So to our listeners out there, we hope this deep dive is giving you something to think about, something to chew on.
The conversation doesn't end here.
It's up to each of us to keep asking questions, to keep digging deeper, to keep pushing for a better future.
We can do this.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, keep diving deep.